I'm Paul Goodenough. I'm the CEO and founder of Aerian, also known as Aerian Studios. We're a web development and web design company. We work across the whole digital broad range of things, so whether it's apps, campaigns, systems, we basically do it all. Well, responsive is a kind of an industry term. What that refers to is the process of the page itself and the way the website works responding to the device that a person has. So responsive is, if you like, the base level. The device you're on should, at the very least, repackage the content in a way that's optimized for your device. What we tend to do, though, is prefer a progressive enhancement model. What that means is it doesn't just look at the screen size of your device, it also looks at the hardware it has and the capability it has and progressively enhances, so it optimizes it as much as possible for the device you're on. Naturally, you can't do it for every device, but you know, the big popular ones, of course, the suites of Apple and Android devices, those are ones you can target and really make the most of their hardware. There's been a big movement over the years to move away from the internet being something you sit down and look at, to being the internet something that's with you wherever you go. There's a big push towards the Internet of Things, for example, which is the principal idea that the internet will connect all devices around us, be it from a glass of water to a telephone to a light switch. It will all be connected by the internet. And responsive has been a very strong keyword of the industry for probably the last sort of 7 or 8 years, specifically because of the rise in mobile and tablet technology. And the new generation doesn't want to see the internet as something that they sit down and work at, whereas perhaps a previous generation saw the internet as a form of information. The newer generations have seen it as a form of entertainment, communication, socializing, learning, play, everything. And that mindset has been totally broken apart for perhaps the last sort of 5 or 6 years, whereby people expect now a better service on their phone, a more targeted and quicker service than they do on their desktop. And what responsive allows you to do is to build one product, one website or one service, but actually dial it up in the areas that are most interesting to the audience. So whether that's an app, whether that's a game, whether that's a system, you can actually make bespoke functionality for that thing. Because we predominantly make websites, systems, apps and campaigns, there isn't much of the Internet of Things actually reaching the public sphere as yet. Certainly we've been involved in quite a few innovation pieces, looking, for example, with manufacturers and people who make hardware for how they can make their hardware empowered by the internet. But at the moment it's mostly innovation pieces, mostly proof of concepts. But give it 5 years, particularly in the healthcare industry, and I think you're going to see a big movement. Just looking at the fact I've got a Fitbit on. Most people now are picking up connected devices to wear on their bodies, wearables as they're called. That will be a big push, and I think the healthcare and the dietary world will be probably the first one to go. If you could, for example, monitor the amount of calories you're consuming from the things you buy and the things you use, that's going to be a benefit to everybody. Then once that bit gets connected, then it's a case of your telephones, your ovens, your fridges and your lights and so on and so forth. But that secondary thought is still seen as being very much a luxury or a gadget at the moment, whereas the first is seen as its primary service is by actually having the internet on the device, be it your Fitbit or whatever it might be, is improving the service for you. So hopefully that makes a bit of distinction between them. I think speech is going to be a big thing. I was actually thinking about that just yesterday. So I think there's a way to go before speech can actually be a useful human interface between something. I think that what will happen is people who write content now, be that books, comics, TV shows and films, will eventually get to write algorithms or be writing words and clever sentences for things like human interface readers and speech patterns. I'm sure all of us, if we've used Siri or Alexa or whatever it is, we just try the funny things that it can say, and we also, Alexa has got I think it's called the Magic Kingdom or the Magic Mirror, which is almost like a speech adventure where you can choose what happens. And for me, the opportunity there will probably first come in the form of toys and entertainment. If you can imagine you had children or you like toys yourself, if you could have say a transformer toy and that could actually interact with a child and actually understand what the child's saying and give back information and give a narrative, give a story, there's a real opportunity there. And then even more so if you could actually then have each of those toys being able to interact with each other and then back to the child. Then you can move away from the principle of kids watching a film that has a very linear narrative to one that's a more interactive narrative where each of the toys plays a role and they understand what the child is saying and so on and so forth. So that for me will be incredibly disruptive because suddenly our methods and all the different ways we actually consume narratives will change. You may have also heard of a thing called blockchain technology. I think there's a big push for that at the moment, and without covering it in too much detail, there's an opportunity there and also there's a lot of misunderstanding in blockchain. So one of the benefits of blockchain is that it should always have a record of the truth that happens on it. So security at the moment happens via a single point of truth, be that a server or a collection of servers. If you went to, say, for example, HSBC's banking service, it'll be on a server or a collection of server. Effectively, it's just like big dot in the middle, lots of spiders coming out of it, people coming into that big dot in the middle of the server. With blockchain technology and distributed development, what happens is that application that's formerly held on a computer or computers is actually spread between all of the people on the network. So say you've got 1 million people on this network, they each can contain a tiny little nugget of that software program. Meaning that it should be fundamentally uncrackable, because if you crack one person's computer, you actually get a part of the solution. And also with blockchain technology like Ethereum, what you're doing is it's almost like a currency exchange, because by actually using the system and trying to actually hack into that, it costs you money, or gas as they call it. So effectively what we'll see then is a system whereby not the power is in the people, but a very similar model whereby the middleman, in the case I'm using here, the server is removed in favour of a public model. So to kind of put that into an analogy, similar to the Uber sort of paradigm, which is rather than having a company that owns taxis and taxi drivers work for it, they've got a piece of software whereby everyone controls a bit of their software on their mobile, and actually people can then jump in and jump out and be Uber drivers. The same sort of thing could well happen with the blockchain, that you'll have a security protocol that sits spread over multiple computers and multiple people, and actually people then use that and provision that themselves. So HSBC, rather than building their own, they just use that. The government, rather than building their own, they can just use that. I could go on about this for quite a while, but that's the general principle. With its those technologies, we do a lot of work with AWS, Amazon Web Services. So a lot of things around the kind of cliche terms of DevOps. So whether that's using lambdas to spin up high performance tasks. There's also I'm going to use the wrong term here, but it's basically we're also looking into using serverless hosting. So actually there is no, the website isn't hosted anywhere, and only when someone actually requests to look at the website does it spin up a server to actually present it to you. That's basically a way of reducing the costs for the client in terms of the hosting, because generally when you host based on the larger amount of people who will go there rather than the smaller amount of people who will go there. You host on a worst case scenario, but also it should be more ecological as well, because you're not using because you're not using all that processing power, all of that server, unless you actually physically want it. So I guess to break that up into its broadest scale, what happens with AWS really well is that the hosting will add more servers and more power and more infrastructure to the DevOps environment as and when it's needed. And that's a big push for us. We do a lot of work with people at the BBC and government for that. There's also, there's quite a lot of things we're looking into. There's also a big push to making, rather than having what's called server-side websites, which basically means you ask something of a website and it presents a page back to you. Think of Amazon, you've typed in a search term, you've hit go, you get a page load, it then brings back the page to you. That's a server-side model. There's a definite movement towards more of a JavaScript or Node.js model, which is basically what you actually do is you have a continual two-way back and forth with the website, and you don't get those big page loads. You don't necessarily have those formal navigation structures. It's a far more personalized journey. So yeah, we're doing a lot of work with those things at the moment. I think for me, user experience will change over the next 5 years to be a much more personalised experience. I think gone are the days where we'll see sort of hello Paul and basically that's the only personalisation we see. I think what will happen very soon, particularly with healthcare again, is when we log into any sort of healthcare site, it will not only know all about us and our what we've told it, be that medical records, be that anything we might be interested in improving like diet or health, but it will also understand the types of articles and the types of content that we would want to consume given our current context. So it will say, oh, you're on a mobile phone. Oh, it's 9 in the morning. I know you're going to be travelling to work based upon what we've known about you in the past. Therefore, here are some 5-minute things that don't require internet, or some half-an-hour things that are audio-based. And broadly, I think that you'll see a big movement towards personalisation. And all of the work we're doing in our design team at the moment is really sort of dialing that up, making sure that people feel that a website is talking to them in a two-way conversational manner rather than lecturing them and saying, here's what we're about, here's all the information.